the opening shot in an effort to control the Middle East.
Okay, let's go through a few of the issues in some detail, if you would, please. I want to begin with the independent correspondent that you were in Iraq, therefore without any corporate media alliance and pressure to twist your insights and words. How would you summarize the current situation in Iraq? And we have seen very recently that a group of the largest oil companies, mostly American, I believe, are being invited by the Iraqi oil ministry into Iraq for further oil development. And is this an indication of the privatization that will benefit American corporations only at the expense of Iraqis? And on the other hand, we also see that the Maliki government trying to take more control of the country by demanding that they had the final say over where the U.S. troops can or cannot conduct military operations. Would you deal with those issues?
Well, on the oil, I think it shows that this is one of the many bad side effects of the war, that it's opened the way for these oil companies. Incidentally, these are the same companies that were running the oil or exploiting the oil under the British. You know, when Iraq was discovered to have oil, they set up this Iraq Petroleum Company in the 1920s, which had its headquarters, of course, in London. The major shareholders were the same four big major companies that are now getting these contracts. So they're just going back to the old colonial position, and they would never have had that if they hadn't toppled Saddam. So that's the first thing. I think on the other point, just remind me again what you said.
Well, what I want to do is I want to go into what it is like to be a citizen living in Iraq today.
Right. Well, I mean, it's just a miserable thing. I mean, which is why 4 million people have had to leave their homes. It's one of the biggest refugee problems in modern times. 2 million have left the country, 2 million are displaced within the country. There's very little electricity, just a couple of hours a day, and of course it's sweltering 100 degree Fahrenheit heat at the moment. There's water is very spasmodic when it comes on, the sewage is rotten. Living conditions are very, very poor. The hospitals are running out of drugs and equipment. So it's very bad. Most people now have a kind of nostalgia for the Saddam period. They don't obviously like the atrocities that he committed, but they were saying, normal life was better. Under Saddam, if you kept your nose clean politically, as it were, if you didn't get involved in politics, then you could live a normal life. And 95% of the people didn't get involved in politics. They knew it was too dangerous. Now, it doesn't matter whether you feel political or not, whether you're an activist or not, whether you have any kind of job that's in the government or out of the government, you're subject to the same security problems and the same daily utility issues of power and water, etc.
I appreciate your insights. Thank you. Some people would say that the surge is working. We still hear this on this side of the ocean, especially out of McCain's mouth, except he's unique. He is genetically engineered to have two mouths. So he tells you one thing one day and something else another day. Now, you've written that al-Qaeda seems to be falling a bit in the background since the U.S. has been fueling Sunni factions and militias and turning them in against al-Qaeda. Put this in perspective in what is really happening there with other tensions between various Iraqi factions. Even if al-Qaeda were out of the picture, if every single person of al-Qaeda were gone from Iraq, it doesn't change a whole lot. Also summarize for us the most popular view of the U.S. occupation at the point in time, right now, from the Iraqi citizen.
Well, I think the majority of Iraqis want the U.S. to leave, set an early timetable for a withdrawal. I think that's been the case for a long time. I think they are very much against al-Qaeda. After all, al-Qaeda is foreign as much as the Americans are, and the reason why al-Qaeda is now a little bit on the back foot is not just because of an insertion of extra American troops. That, I think, is a minor factor. It is that these Sunni Arabs have got fed up with al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda's brought in this Salafi or Wahhabi doctrine from Saudi Arabia, which treats the Shia as heretics and not true Muslims and therefore have to be eliminated. That was never the picture in Iraq before, and that is not the picture that most Iraqi Sunnis have. There may be resentment against the Shias for various things, but they accept that they're Muslim, they accept that they're Iraqi. So this Al-Qaeda ideology is foreign, and the Sunni Arabs are rising up against it. And I suppose you have to say that the American commanders under General Petraeus had some sort of common sense to see that these people could be used to, if Al-Qaeda is the enemy of the United States and it's also the enemy of the Sunni Arabs, then there may be a potential alliance between the Sunni Arabs and the Americans. And so they've got on board with these people. They've helped to arm them and give them money, build up the Sunni Arabs. But of course it's a two-edged sword, because as soon as Al-Qaeda gets weaker, then the Sunni Arabs will turn either against the Americans, as they were doing before, the national resistance, or some of them may turn against the Shia, and we'll get more of this sectarian tension. So I think it's a very short-term and rather cynical policy that the Americans are pursuing of building up this new Sunni Arab militia. It's very odd, because they're trying to cut down on the Shia militia of Muqtada while building up a Sunni militia of the Arabs of the Anbar province area west of Baghdad.
We could be saying the same thing that happened with arming the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, what is known as blowback. In times, all this money and all these arms we're giving to the Sunnis, creating militias. We have no control over those militias. We have no control over the religious leaders that and these clans that handle these people. So we could be gaining some short-term support by having the Sunnis fight the Al-Qaeda, and long-term by giving them all the weapons they need to carry on a conflict against whoever they choose to.
Exactly. I think that is blowback is a real possibility, but I think all that Bush wanted to do was to somehow stabilize the situation in terms of the casualty figures, both of American troops, well, primarily of American troops, that's all he's worried about, not so much about the civilians, although the casualties there have probably gone down a little bit. He just wanted to hold it out till January the 20th, 2009, so that the complete catastrophe that he's created isn't so acute on the day he leaves office.
I'm very concerned that sometime in the next 6 months we could be seeing an effort to provoke, or actually cause a war in Iran. And with all the growing reporting about tensions between Iran and the United States, we forget that this devastated country, Iraq, is in the middle of it. And so from your point of view, what are the Iraqis saying about U.S.-Iranian situations and the administration's gestures and threats about an attack or an invasion of Iran, or our support of Israel doing it, because Israel will not do it without the full support of our government? And
well, the Iraqis certainly don't want that. Look, they had an 8-year war with Iran from 1980 onwards, which was caused by Saddam Hussein, backed up by the United States, and an enormous number of Iraqis suffered as a result of that. They certainly don't want that again, and so it's not a coincidence, it's not an accident that as this anti-Iranian hysteria has been building up in the Western media, that the Prime Minister of Iraq, who is an essentially pro-American figure in the short term, who was appointed almost by the Americans, rushed to Baghdad, to Tehran, to reassure the Iranians that he would not allow his country to be used for an attack against Iran. So this is one of the rare occasions where the Iraqi government has had the courage to stand up to Washington and say, look, we don't agree with your policy, even though you're sort of propping us up, because they feel a war with Iran would be a catastrophe even greater than what they've got already, and they're prepared to say frontally to the United States, whatever you do against Iran, don't do it from Iraq. We're staying out of this one.
Well, I don't think they would have to do it from Iraq. Seymour Hersh's recent article, I'm sure you've read it,
yes, of course,
talks about the preparation of